Hello, I'm Lindsay Sisk. Welcome to the Marriage Challenge podcast, brought to you by Care for the Family. In this episode, we're joined by Richard and Maria Kane, who are going to talk about some of the challenges faced in marriage when you come from different cultural backgrounds. But first, let me introduce them. Richard and Maria have been married for 30 years and have 3 children. Richard is the founder of National Marriage Week and now heads up Marriage Week International, and Maria is involved with relationship education. So, Richard and Maria, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you.
So what we'd like to know first of all is, how did you two meet and end up getting married?
Well, we met in the washing up room at Homestead Manor, which is a youth with a mission base. And I was doing the washing up, and I remember this young lady walked in. I remember thinking, oh, she's attractive. But it was kind of really objective. It wasn't like a crush or anything, you know.
Yeah, I was a student. I was doing my thing. He was a leader. He was doing his thing. So we didn't really spend a lot of time together because we were busy doing other things.
Well, you had a friendship group and I had a friendship group, and they were different, weren't they?
Yeah. And then it wasn't until we finished, really, that we became a couple.
So that's how we met. And funnily enough, we were there last week doing a bit of speaking, and we went in the washing up room, and the washing up machine is still there, the original one. So it's quite funny, really.
That's brilliant. So now, looking at today's topic of maintaining a relationship when you're from different cultural backgrounds, can you tell me a little bit about your experience and some of the challenges you faced in your relationship because of those differences?
Well, I think it's like this when, obviously for anyone who get married, if you've come from the same culture or a different culture, what you see of each other is like an iceberg, really. What you see is very small. The real you is underneath, and the deeper you go, the deeper is the core values that you picked up as you were brought up. You know, we all have them, subcultures. So I think when then you get married to somebody who has also got a different subculture, but also have a different nationality culture, you got 2 things to deal with. Because I think everybody has to deal with the things underneath the surface of the iceberg. So there's sort of things that you just assume that everybody do at certain times. And the way you express yourself, the way you may answer a question, or little body languages, and what you do at Christmas, what food you eat, where you go on holiday, and things like that. Like Swedish people, for example, we love the outdoors. So in the summer, we're always outside. So I remember when I first arrived here, no one used to sit outside very much. And of course, I'm a Swede. We always have breakfast outside, lunch, dinner, and then we sit outside with candles and a fire. So I kept saying, well, where's the garden furniture? Why are you sitting indoors? You know, it's 25 degrees outside. Or, you know, or where is the ice cream cafe, for example?
Different cultures.
What you expect. So when I go to Sweden, the subject you talk about is totally alien to what you talk about to British people. You know?
When you go to Sweden, you hang around the table, and like you talk about what kind of heating system you have in your house. You know, and like what's happening in the environment and things like this. Well,
fuel prices.
Yeah, in the UK, you might talk about politics or, you know, what's happening in it's a different thing. But of course, you know, 2 people that come from diverse families, strange upbringings, bring together their cultural norms that they've accrued over a lifetime. And very often they are very different. And so it is different if it's a cultural thing, like in our situation. But then the upside is what you bring is like a great kind of way of doing things, which is different to the way we would do it in England. So, for example, if you come here at Christmas, you know, it's just candles everywhere. It's like candle world. My wife thinks nothing of going out to IKEA or something and buying like a pack of 200 candles just to last a week or so. Do you know, and I'm thinking like, how does this ever work? But it's just a cultural thing, isn't it? You know, that is different and it's fine and you have to adjust. So it's just a bit more of the same. But it just
adds a bit extra. Do you know what I mean? Just adds a bit.
Did you notice, particularly in the early years of your marriage, that some of these differences felt more prevalent or things that you had to work through together?
Yeah, definitely. Because, you know, you have to get to know each other and just the way you reacted to things. Like, you know, if you asked me if I want a cup of coffee, I'll say yes. And in my view, that's very polite. And of course, it's very rude in English if you don't say yes, please. You know, things like that.
Yeah, and then also, you know, when you come from a different culture, that normally means you come from a different country, which normally means your parents and extended family are a long way away. So when we were early years with our marriage with little ones, we had no support really. So your parents were in Sweden, long way away, came over very infrequently, and my parents lived elsewhere and weren't available. So, you know, one of the things that makes and really helps like a young couple starting out, particularly with children, is parental support, just the day-to-day stuff really. And of course, we didn't have any of that because we came from different places.
Yeah, we never had it, so we've had to be on our own, basically. But just a little thing, like when our first child started school, and then it's like you have to put down an emergency number in case anything happens, and you have to say name who's going to come and pick them up and stuff like that. I haven't got anyone. It's only Richard and me. There's no one to pick them up. So I found a friend of mine who was in a similar situation that I made friends with. We basically became each other's extended family. I picked her children up and she picked up mine. And it was the only number I had to ring, you know. So things like that can be quite hard.
So I know you've worked with many other couples who face challenges in different ways, but in particular the couples that come from different cultural backgrounds, what are some of the common things that they struggle with?
I think the expectation of the outside world, so the extended family, parents, and the way, you know, different cultures do things, because it depends on how you view family. Do you view family as a house, or do you view family more as a root? Well, like a root sort of family, sort of you go in and out and you belong to this family. You might talk and ask for advice, but you make your own decisions. While in a family, but it's more like a hierarchy, then still the matriarch makes the decisions. You pay, you know, you set more of a, they're more in charge even if you're married. I think it's quite a thing, extend the family and expectations of the outside world.
Yeah, I think also, it's a bit like also, if you marry somebody from a different culture, okay, you know you're paying a high price, but there's normally one of you who's given up. So in your case, you gave up Sweden to live with me, okay? So in order to do that, you kind of have this transaction that goes on. So if you give up your culture, then in doing so, what you're saying is, I'm paying a higher than normal price here, so therefore I expect a higher than normal return. So your expectations of what our marriage therefore would look like and feel like is possibly a bit higher than it would be if you were an Indigenous British person. Mm-hmm. So I think in a cross-cultural relationship, you have something like that going on sometimes, which plays out, and you have to be able to manage that.
What are some of the steps you've taken to keep your relationship strong over the years?
Well, I think when we first got married, somebody tried to do some marriage preparation with us, but it wasn't brilliant, I wouldn't say. It didn't really do much. I think when I got married, I just assumed, I think, that things is just going to work out. You know, I didn't have to do anything. And I didn't come from the type of family where we spoke about anything. So I never had that sort of family type. So basically on my own. So I was just assuming, and as soon as I married Richard, of course I realised that wasn't the way. You know, we were very different in the way we were doing things and thinking and behaving. It's very different. So it was probably a bit of a struggle when we first got married. It was a bit of a shock to the system, you know. And then I realised after a while that actually I needed to do things to make it work. You know, I had to learn skills. I had to find out about things.
Yeah, and I think for me, early years of our marriage, it was pretty rocky, really. I mean, with what I know now, I can't believe we made it, really, because we had very little family support, didn't really know each other very well, weren't established in our careers or anything. It was just like all the boxes you'd never want to see ticked on a list of like, these are the reasons why it's going to fail. We ticked them all, really, which is amazing. But one of the things we always did was we always said that we were really committed to our marriage. You know, that divorce wasn't an option, that we were committed to the idea of the marriage and to invest in it and make it work. So therefore, we always had an appetite to read a book, to go on a seminar, to find out about what other people are saying about what you have to do to have a happy marriage. So we always had an appetite for that. And I remember, I think because we both were prepared to go on that thing and do that, implicitly what it said to each other is, you're really important to me and our relationship is really important to me. And I fundamentally believe that if a couple say things like that to each other, that they do have the wherewithal to work things out. Because if your attitude is right, then other things fall into place. So if you have like a teachable attitude about your marriage, then you're going to learn. If you've got an attitude which is like, I want to invest in my relationship, I want to learn what makes you tick, then you're going to learn those things, because you do have the necessary wherewithal. But fundamentally, it's about attitude.
What advice would you give to a couple who are perhaps struggling in their relationship because of having different cultural backgrounds?
Well, I would advise them, obviously, first to be open to change, but also be open to meet in the middle. And then they should find a couple like us to just come and talk, have a conversation, just chat, tell what's going on, and then sort of talk through about trying to find a middle ground and how for them to manage their family wherever they come from and the family wherever they live, so they can sort of find a common, helping them to understand. And I think that really helps, just have a conversation. I call them marriage conversations.
I've got a bit of advice. It's a great thing if you read a book. There's some great books out there. These books are really accessible, but what you mustn't do if you read a book like that is you mustn't read it on your own. Because if you read it on your own, what you then do is you create a list of improvements the other person needs to make, and they haven't had the joy and the experience of reading the book. So they're not on the same page as you. So books are great, but what you must do is read a chapter and then give it to the other person and say, you read this chapter, and then I'll read chapter 2. And you do it in increments, because that way it's a learning experience together, and you're able to appropriate some of the results of that as a couple, instead of, it can be, I've sat with people whose partners have read a book and it's generated a hit list of things they need to improve on. And to be honest with you, that's not helpful at all. I think also couples can cope with anything as long as they've got the basics right. And the basics are like, are we communicating? Are we having sex? Are we in control of our money? And, are we arguing with each other or not arguing and things like this? If you get the basics right like that, then everything else does fall into place.
But I do think you need to learn things like, for example, some cultures are direct communications, while others have indirect communications. Yeah. So, which that's really important, what kind of way are you doing, thinking about on how you do it. So I think you need to find, there are simple books that you can learn what cultures are, because they call it, some cultures are hot, some cultures are cold. So hot cultures are very friendly and come and visit me and I give you dinner. If you have got nowhere to stay, you can have a room and you don't have to make any pre-arranged arrangement, just turn up. While any cold culture, you need to give them 3 months notice so they can clean the house, and they won't automatically come and pick you up. They won't feed you either, and then they won't give you any hospitality, So there are different sort of things like that you need to learn about as well, because they do have an effect on how you are with each other, Yeah,
we heard about a couple who were struggling, and he's from Denmark and she's from Brazil. Well, you can imagine them struggling. Two more diverse cultures coming together, So yeah, you're right. It depends on the degree of diversity.
So like her mother-in-law would come visit every day, and not just visit for 1 minute. She would come and visit for 5-6 hours every single day. And in the end, he said, I can't cope. I'm a Dane. I need my own space. I want to be with my wife. I want to be on my own. I want to do these things. So they have to, you have to talk about those things, because they do influence you.
Richard and Maria, thank you so much for being so open with all that you've shared with us. Before we finish, in every episode, we ask our guest couple to give us a marriage challenge, something practical that couples listening can try out in the coming weeks. So based on what we've talked about today, what challenge would you give to our listeners?
Well, I think it's really good to cook for each other. So over the course of a week, as a challenge, you could go I'm going to cook for you one day, you're going to cook for me the next day, and take turns and really get into it. Because I think cooking for somebody you care for is a real act of love, and perhaps light a few candles
I mean, I was thinking about being intentional. It's really important. You need to be intentional about marriage. So that would be, you cook a meal and you sit down and you have some candles, maybe, if you like candles, and you look at each other, and you communicate. Because nowadays, couples don't sit down at the table and talk to each other. So I would say the challenge would be to cook a meal and sit down together and then look at each other and talk about something and not work and not children.
I cooked for you last night, but we didn't look at each other.
Well, no, but we normally do.
Thank you. I think that's a brilliant suggestion. So that's all for this episode. It just leaves me to say thank you, Richard and Maria, for joining us. And we look forward to tackling another marriage challenge next time. Goodbye.
You have been listening to the Marriage Challenge podcast. For further information about our courses, resources and events, visit us at www.careforthefamily.org.uk.